what's the other change we made at the last call?
Live streaming is on.
I see there's some small changes here in the liquidity mining. I think these might have actually changed after we did the call. I don't think we changed them during the last governance call. Okay, and then I see right here, old donors to Giveth directly have a little bit less weight. And it looks like the initial donors have a little less weight. I don't know. Was anyone else on the last governance call? Do they remember any other changes that we made to this doc? I think it's tough because I do think that this doc, this first version has changed a little bit since we duplicated it and edited it. Okay.
No, that's good.
Fair enough. I mean, like, I guess maybe it doesn't matter too much, right? Like, this is the current state anyway, this one.
This the latest edited one, I think, is this version. So I took Danny's version and just made a few small changes. Basically, one of the changes I made was I made all these different liquidity pools even. There were some unequal weights here. Just made them even for starters. And then also I had some, when I did that, there was a couple percentage points left over. And I just added those to the new donors. I figured if we had somewhere to put them, it'd be great to incentivize traction, incentivize people to donate to Giveth and to new projects on Giveth too. So I think this is the latest version we have. Go ahead, James.
I have a couple of questions. Just, I mean, like, yeah, like just looking at the liquidity mining there, like it's Giveth Uni, Giveth Balancer, and Give Honey Swap. So like, I'm just wondering, like, are we? Okay, first of all, the spreadsheet is about the initial supply, right? Like the initial breakdown. It's not about like after it's launched, right?
Well,
I'm just
so a lot of
sorry.
Well, so a lot of these things are basically buckets that we will not rely. When we launch, we will not have a DAO that can vote on things, right? It'll just be, okay, we have these tokens in these buckets and our intention is to distribute them to these issues. So we won't have, after a couple months at least, or hopefully by 2 months, we'll have a DAO up that can actually continue to distribute things, but these buckets will already be set. So effectively, these are like the first DAO decisions you could imagine. And then the DAO after that can make new buckets or add to these existing buckets.
Okay, cool. So let's get some more clarity on that, because I think that makes sense. But I also had a similar question around, like, after we get to 100 million, is there continuous issuance beyond that?
That would be up to the DAO to decide for sure. But in the current Honey model, they can set it to 0 issuance if they'd like.
Cool. Okay, and I've seen some proposals in the Honey DAO about adjusting the issuance and stuff because they thought it was too high.
Exactly. It started at 60% and now it's at 30%.
Okay, cool. And we have vesting tier 1, and then we also have rep DAO, and then 1-year distro. So none rep DAO, that means that these tokens would immediately go to the current rep DAO that we have on XDAI.
Yeah.
On day 1, okay. And then vesting tier 1, what is vesting tier 1?
So I was originally thinking that we might have multiple different types of vestings, but yeah, the idea is that it's a certain amount that's allocated right away without any vesting, like without any locks, and then a 4-year unlock time so that they're with us until the next bull market.
Okay, cool. So now after we went through it, we ended up with just one level of vesting.
Yeah.
In its current design. Okay, cool. So you can update that. And then 1-year distro, this just means, every block for the first year after we launch, these will be rewarded.
Yep.
Okay.
And we'll have to do more due diligence on exactly how that works with HoneySwap right now, but I don't think that there's a challenge doing that on mainnet. There's a lot of options to fork.
Cool. And then, okay, actually it looks like here, so 30% in the first month, decreasing every week for a year. So does this mean that, so out of the 2 million tokens, 600,000 will be rewarded to liquidity providers in the first month of the program?
That was the thought. To basically fight against the airdrop inflation, we would want to have a high reward for people who are willing to yield farm. And then it can decrease, and then our governance can decide to top it off or not. But the general thought behind this is, hey, you like Giveth, right? Just put your money in here and you'll get rewarded for a year and forget about it. Don't even, let's just leave it there.
For sure. Cool. Does anyone else have any questions about any of these sections or rows or the doc in general? I wanted to ask how final is this? I know we want to create a proposal and get this approved, and then that'll eliminate the blocker so that we can potentially start building the contract actually with the token. But I assume that there's still some wiggle room after we approve this and stuff. If we have a good reason to change some of these, we
absolutely
still can't have contracts deployed, right?
I'm 100% sure that almost all of these will change when we actually deploy. We'll learn so much by doing, but it's more like a starting point.
And Gabby just joined the call here also.
Oh, hey, Gabby.
Hey, guys.
Hey,
Gabby. Glad you can make it. Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Nice to meet.
So Gabby, we're going over the Give token allocation and initial distribution doc. And the goal for the call today is to get some consensus on this so we can move forward. So I think looking at this, I think we at least have all the known initiatives that we'd want to fund outlined here. And the weights seem pretty reasonable to me. Does anyone have any questions about any of these initiatives or their weights? Or does anyone think that initiative might be missing?
I would say that's what we're really deciding on more than the numbers. The numbers need to be there so we have some perspective, but it's really about like, if we have these buckets, we're not adding new buckets. That's really, I feel like, where the final decision is.
Got it. Everyone sees here we've got a few roadmap projects, things that we've identified that we want to build. Got some tokens set aside to fund those projects. Kai, how do you feel about this initial source cred funding?
The numbers. It's so hard to read for me, really. Like I can listen to you guys, but I'm not at all know like really how to do this stuff. Can you ask the question differently?
Yeah, I guess what I was kind of getting at was just how do you feel about having any percent of the token just allocated to source cred in a way that it's kind of just automated, and that if anyone gets source cred drain, they'll be getting Give tokens?
Well, like I said, we would probably need to set up ARA cred. Gabby, you probably know more about that than me.
Well, Mateo knows a lot about it too.
ARA cred?
Yeah, I just got to investigate a bit of it. So it's not done yet, but it's not like a necessity for making the distribution. We can make another way. Just I was talking with Sandpiper from One Hive, and he talked to me like they have one account in the source thread that is used mainly for burning tokens. So every time that someone is getting the gift token or whatever token, we just make a transfer inside the source thread and burn that grain. So because it was already distributed in the real token that we are handling. So if we are going to use gift token, manually someone will make the transaction, the transfer, and inside source credit it would just be burned through one specific account, an identity that we make. And yeah, then we make the transaction through the blockchain regularly.
All right, I was more talking about like how quick we can set it up or how easy it is to set it up. It seems to work pretty well. Communities like Metagame only use SourceCred to mint their tokens or to get their numbers for tokens. So it looks like it works pretty fine already.
The thing is that they mention explicitly that they are not really audited. No, they are not done. So I'm not sure if that's like the way to go yet. So that's the only thing that I would say. But yeah, it seems easy enough.
It probably also depends on the rest of the timeline. It doesn't need to be the first piece that is ready. It should be ready with the other pieces. So to close it, I feel pretty good, like putting source credit in there. And about the ratio, is that good or bad with that weight? I can't really tell you.
I guess that the main problem is how do we handle the main contributors like we are right now. If I'm going to get more grain than someone that is randomly contributing someday, yeah. So I'm not sure that the allocation is making considerations of that.
That's
great.
If I can add to that point, in my opinion, with the project I see using SourceCred, I believe it's going to be something like a tool that is going to keep evolving. So probably having some funds in there to keep getting more of what the SourceCred project is going to offer eventually would be a good decision, I think. I believe it's not yet a final product, so once it's more features get available, I think it's going to be more and more powerful for the purpose of having that tool.
It's a good point, and there's a lot of benefits of integrating these tools that keep evolving.
And there is something also cool that I just found out by doing the implementation in SourceCred in the DEC, that there is a ratio that you can handle that says if you are too old in the SourceCred, let's say, you get along the time passes, you get more less grain that you were given first time. Let's say if you are a recent contributor, by default, SourceCred is giving you more grain than someone that is someone else that is contributing too frequently. So I think it all ends up by seeing how accurate our credit implementation is, how reliable it turns out.
Yeah, I think that's the important thing, right? Like the important question is, do we think SourceCred at the moment is a fair representation of who has contributed value or whatever? And I think ultimately it can be a manual proposal anyway, right? Like that we just put in ourselves. Like I think right now we already adjust SourceCred based on feedback from the others, etc. Right? So I don't know. I think like that's for me what I think is the most important. And in terms of the percentage, like I mean, it seems fair. 5%. Is that what it is?
Mm-hmm.
So if we mint it manually, that's also always an option. We would use there is this off-chain token distribution from SourceCred that just gives people accounts on a local ledger, local in that case is GitHub, and yeah, we would just need to subtract for the members who get other rewards, and that's probably the better way to start.
Definitely. There's no need to automate this stuff. Remember, Balancer started off for the first several months just manually giving rewards and being transparent about how they were calculated. I think if it's fine for Balancer, I think that's fine for us. And for almost every one of these. It's just we don't try to overdo it and automate it. We do what we need to do to make it transparent and fair and honest, and then we people will trust us. People do trust us. So
well said. Yeah, I feel much better after hearing everyone's thoughts on it. The fact that we will still have that human element, at least at first, I think alleviates any concerns there. Cool. So with one question I have too is with these tokens, if we don't have this DAO live yet, where will these tokens sit after we deploy?
I'm imagining that we will basically just have the rep DAO mint all of these tokens at once, and we will just say and stick to this like a choice of like these tokens go here, these tokens go there, these tokens go there.
Okay, that makes sense. As liquidity mining's ready and stuff, we'll allocate the tokens from the rep DAO.
Yeah.
So we'll do this on XDAI first, or?
Yes. Well, we'll see. We'll see. It depends. I'm pretty confident that XDAI will have the Ether bridge by the time we launch. Because right now, if you mint a token on XDAI, you can't move it to Ethereum. But if you move a mint a token on Ethereum, you can move it to XDAI. This is a very small implementation detail of whether or not we create the token first on Ethereum or XDAI. But if we can move XDAI tokens to Ethereum, then we'll just mint it on XDAI.
How does that even work? Because you still need to have like the token contract on mainnet, right? And I guess that's the problem we're trying to solve.
Exactly. So they have a bridge called the Omni Bridge, and you can bridge any token. I have a bunch of PAN on XDAI right now, right? I had to pay a lot of gas on the XDAI chain to deploy a token contract for PAN, but I did it manually through the bridge without having to click any buttons. I just said, hey, send PAN over. And then they said, okay, well, you have to sign this transaction on XDAI to deploy the token contract. It's like, okay, cool. You know, but they don't have it so it works the other way where you have to call that transaction for Ethereum yet. It's in the works. It's done. They just need to get it audited, and then it will be passed along. So if they get it audited and launch it, then you wouldn't even know. You wouldn't even know that you're deploying a token contract until you see the bill in MetaMask.
I tried that out with their stake token. Did they mint all of that in mainnet or XDAI directly?
They minted it in mainnet.
Got it.
But
yeah,
Honey, for instance, can't cross the bridge. I mean, they could manually build a bunch of smart contracts and make it work themselves, but they're waiting for this bridge upgrade.
Got it. Because Honey was deployed on XDAI.
Exactly.
Cool. All right. Well, I think we've gone through this doc. We've given some room for questions. Does anyone have any final thoughts or questions on this doc, or do you think it's ready? Do we think and remember, the main thing we want to make sure here is that we have the right buckets. Do we think that this is ready to propose to the DAO so we can get some finality and start building this?
One question is for the initial source grid founding. Are you also considering that a portion of that to be allocated to the tweets and research of the source grid itself, or because I think at least in one high experience, it's take a decent amount of time to distribute this, these allocations in a bi-weekly or weekly basis, and also keep iterating on the adjustment of the parameters.
So like for the maintainers, they should get a piece of the source cred as well.
Yeah, I mean, just to make sure that there is people looking at that and keep iterating on the adjustment of the source algorithm.
I think that's fair.
But I'm not sure if you are also considering that as some of the other buckets in the table. So just to make sure it's considered.
I mean, in my mind, it was kind of part of the team budget, but I think it's fair to have
Cool.
some of it.
No, maybe it's okay also in the team.
I don't know. What do you think, Willie? What do you guys think?
So what is exactly the question? Is some of this going to go towards the maintainers of source cred? Was that the question? Whoever's like
the maintainers of deploying source cred for Giveth and dishing tokens manually every week or every month or whatever.
Yeah, I think that that would be basically included. So I know right now Kai is doing a lot of the source cred stuff, and that's one of the things that we factor in when we look at everyone's contributions for the month. So I think
cool.
We would definitely want to reward those, and we would reward them in the same way that we reward any contributor to Giveth.
Right. Okay, cool.
Gabby, do you know what's the percentage that source credit is taking by default? I am trying to look into the documentation, but I'm not sure I can find it that fast.
You mean how much is funnel to source credit?
Yeah.
The source credit. I'm not sure as well, but I can ask one of the guys working on that, and I'll share it with you.
Yeah. Because we can definitely put it into the description over here in the table, saying that by default for each grain transaction, source credit is taking a certain percentage that I'm not sure what is. I'm trying to find it.
Can you explain that, Mateo? Are you saying that source cred takes they charge?
They are not charging by default. They are taking the percentage of for using it or something like that. I'm trying to look into the documentation, but I cannot find it. So
I'm not sure if. Yeah, sorry. I was going to say that I'm not sure if this is like something like enforced by source credit, but I think it's something that communities are trying to do to reward the work done by the source credit team and finance some of that cross collaboration between the two communities. But yeah, I can definitely add the team working on high on that and share what they if they have more context on that.
Cool. So are you saying it's kind of like a donation? Like people can choose to give back to support source code development?
Yeah, exactly. I think it's more like in that kind of area.
Cool, interesting. Definitely interested to hear more about how that works. I think we'd probably be happy to support a little bit for these tools we're using. It is such a cool tool. All right. Any other questions about this doc? If not, I think we can get a proposal up before the end of this call. Awesome. All right, I'm taking that as a sign that we're all on board with this. And of course, the final opportunity to say yay or nay will be the DAO proposal. Cool. Thanks everyone for participating and going through this doc together. So I know we have a couple of other topics that we want to talk about. One is a quick one. So Mitch is on the call. Mitch, thank you for getting together this doc of all of the donors to the revolution.eth, the Giveth multisig address. The quick question here. So we want to, we got this doc together so that we can airdrop all the people who have donated to Giveth. And one thing that Mitch pointed out is that there's a lot of transactions that have failed, as you can see here. So the question is, does anyone have any strong feelings about whether we should still airdrop people who have had failed transactions? Some of them you can see too, they even had a successful transaction afterwards. Or should we not include failed donations in the airdrop? Does anyone have any strong feelings on that?
I wouldn't say to include failed transactions, or is there any reason why we should include them?
I think that's a good question.
No.
Does anyone feel strongly that we should?
It's like, yeah, like the Best Buy, going to Best Buy, buying something, returning it. It's madness. I just, yeah, because I'm writing the terms of use, I found this somewhere. Let me see. It was about payments. No, all payments are final, it says at least.
So I thought that it could be cool to still do an airdrop to the failed donations. I know Uniswap, they still airdrop to anybody who tried to use Uniswap, even if their transaction failed. And you know, it could be cool. It's like they had the intention. They tried to donate. Maybe they might not even know their transaction failed. But I don't feel too strongly about it. So I wanted to ask the group, and if you guys feel differently, then I'm totally cool.
Are we talking about a lot?
Donations.
Do you know?
Like how much would be airdropping?
Yeah, I mean that would be the next question. Like if we say, okay, we even, but if I have 2 failed transactions and then a succeeding one, I would get 3 times the amount.
So that's a good question. I don't think we should. I think if we were to do it, there'd probably be like with Uniswap where there's like a base amount. Everyone got 400 tokens, whether or not if they had traded a bunch or if they had just traded once. And then if you did liquidity, if you were a liquidity provider, you could get more. You got more tokens. Right here in this doc, it looks like we have a suggestion to do a quadratic ratio for every dollar donated and minimum per person per platform. So basically, yeah, if you do any donation, you get a airdrop, and then if you donate a bigger amount, you get more, but it's quadratic. So you don't get significantly more. Basically, everyone who donated, even if you got a small amount, is getting a chunk. And so if we had these failed transactions, I wouldn't include those as additional donations. I would just say, okay, this person donated, once.
Well, I think if we drop something to the failed donations, it could be symbolic, or like a, hey, out of luck this time kind of thing. But I wouldn't go too hard on this because it's for me it doesn't make too much sense. Although those poor people, they really wanted to donate in earnest, and we had some problems sometimes with donations. And I'm even a culprit of the early ones where I put a message. I was very new to Ethereum, and I put a message there in the data field, and it really let gas explode, like the required gas to let a donation go through. And it's one of the worst things I made for Giveth. I don't know how much we lost because of that error. Many people tried again, but around the time of 2017 DEF CON, you would see those for a couple of weeks.
That's funny. So one of these is you. Okay. Well, so what was your final conclusion there, Kai? Is that you're open to it, but ultimately don't think it makes sense?
My instinctual reaction is to not do it, but I guess it could be nice. In that case, I would make a symbolic drop. I don't know, something that's really not much, but something. But you can't be the only one with an opinion here.
I also think there's some sort of there's a few different applications that give us some sort of donation on the regular, but it's really small and it's hard to see. It just looks like a bunch of hidden smart contracts. I can't tell what they are, but it's kind of weird. And so I think a lot of the failed transactions are those. At the beginning, no. At the beginning, those are like real transactions. But a year in, there's a lot of these failed transactions that are like, I don't know. Do you remember it was like $1 million wall or something like that they were trying to do? It's like almost like a Ponzi scheme, and they used our name, and it's like they gave us 2% of the transaction.
I think we asked them to stop.
Sorry.
So, Greg, what are your thoughts? Do you think
up.
we should? Are you leaning more towards airdropping to failed, including them in the airdrop, or not including the failed transactions?
That's a tough question. I lean towards, I guess, airdropping to as many people as we can that had any intention. But honestly, I also worry about like one person or like some random group that has this bot that's basically, doing all these smart contract transactions, and they use a new smart contract every time, it seems, and that these smart contracts will just get a bunch because they were. But maybe that's a good thing. They are auto donating to Giveth, so I don't know. It's a challenge. I think we'd have to look at it a little closer and just to say, like, what does that actually mean? How many addresses is this, and are they actually smart contracts, or are they actually accounts?
Yeah, I like that, because I think it would make sense to filter out the smart contract donors.
I think we should just spread to everyone, raise awareness of Giveth to everyone. It doesn't matter if some person has donated and then maybe had an error or bad transaction or whatever, and then one day figures out, oh, look, I have some Giveth tokens here, and what's Giveth? Oh, that's Giveth. Oh, now I remember. Oh, cool thing. What can I do with that? Or whatever. So, just for the sake of that, maybe. But if it's not too much work, maybe we should just filter out those failed transactions and just double check and see, like what Griff says, is if there are smart contracts or really addresses, and filter based on that.
Yeah, I kind of lean towards that as well. Airdrop to all the people, especially the ones that had intentions of donating. They tried. I think it'd be great to include them still. They tried to donate to Giveth, so they're Giveth fans. And then also, on that note too, does anyone have any strong feelings around whether we should do like a flat airdrop to everyone who donated, or give people who donated more Give tokens? It's definitely easier if we just do a flat amount for everybody. Otherwise, we got to figure out what the value, which we have the historical price of each, so that's cool, but also all these tokens, everyone who donated tokens. We got to figure out the value of the token at the time. I kind of actually like
quadratic.
You like quadratic?
Sorry. Yeah, like if you donated one die worth, then you get, about as much as someone, or you get half as much as someone who donated 2, but then, only 1/10 as much as someone who donated 100.
Mm-hmm. I do like that. I also kind of like just doing just the flat amount, kind of like Uniswap did, 400 for everyone who traded, just X tokens for everyone who donated. And then I guess if you donated, you could double up potentially by if you had donated to Giveth and donated to projects on Giveth.
Oh, okay. So like for every, yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of details, right?
Definitely, yeah. It shows how many details there are to work out.
I mean, would it be fair to say the quadratic would be a reflection of like the number of donations that they made? Because if that's so, then I would go with that.
So the number of donations as opposed to the amount, like
yeah,
number
it's
of
like
interactions.
it's a number of interactions, exactly. So it's a number of like intent and taking action, right? And I think anyway, quadratic is anyway sort of like, it's somehow the less extreme. I like flat, like, yeah, okay, I'm just gonna confuse myself and everyone else. I like quadratic, thumbs up.
Okay, cool. It sounds like we got some good support for the quadratic method. So I think that makes sense too. I was thinking about the Gitcoin situation. Yeah, it could be like, as somebody who's donated to a bunch of projects on Gitcoin and stuff, it could be disappointing or frustrating if they do the airdrop and you get the same amount as people who have just donated one time. So we certainly don't want to frustrate people with this opportunity to delight them.
Yeah, and yeah. I mean, I'm very biased because I'm like the biggest donor to Giveth, so I don't feel comfortable even talking about this. You guys got to decide.
Cool. Well, I think we got some good thoughts from this call, and we can definitely keep fleshing out these details. We got about 8 minutes left, so I want to make sure we have time for other topics. But definitely, I'm going to get a proposal up ASAP with today. I want to do it right after this call to ratify this so we can move forward this document. Another topic, we could talk about some of these issues for the Give token that are in review, but I want to open up the floor too, in case there's any other topics that anyone wants to add to the agenda.
Did you guys happen to talk about the staking stuff?
No, we haven't. I'd be interested in talking about that then.
Okay, so I made a brief proposal. It's not very fleshed out, but one of the buckets is Give token staking, and there's a problem that if we want to do this tax deductible donations, except without taxes or governments approach, then how do we stop someone from just making a proposal on Giveth, donating to themselves, and then getting a bunch of tokens? And so the idea is that, or the idea that I came up with is to say that the amount of donation in return that you get from Give token, like the amount of Give tokens that you get is dependent on how much Give tokens are staked behind each project. And so we would basically say, hey, you can use Give tokens to basically say that this project is awesome and that it deserves, the donors to it deserve an extra bonus for donating. And so anyone with Give tokens could stake behind a project, and then we'd also issue, that's like part of the liquidity mining, we'd also issue Give tokens to the people who are staking behind projects. So it becomes a curation mechanism for legitimate projects. And then we would have to, of course, set up the like donation rebate in a way where it seems fair. That like you can't just stake 5 tokens and get 20 Give tokens back, you know, when you donate, but like have some sort of methodology around that. So that this would basically be the main use case of the Give token. It would be, oh, you use Give tokens to validate projects on the Giveth platform. And then any projects that's been validated by a community of people who are staking tokens behind it, the donors to that project get rewarded.
Awesome.
I guess one of the main reasons I like this approach is because I don't think it'd be very hard to implement. I actually think it'd be super easy to implement on the smart contract side. There's several ways to do it, but I actually think we could sneak it into the MVP launch without it causing any issues.
So Griff and I chatted about this last night, and I think hearing that it's technically feasible and could be implemented by MVP makes me, initially I was a little skeptical, and I'm still a little bit skeptical, but I do think that it could be a good solution for MVP. Just in full transparency, so some of the reasons I'm a little skeptical is I was wondering, like, will it really solve this problem? I think we could still have projects that basically stake tokens, and they can still donate to themselves. It doesn't necessarily prevent them from donating to themselves and getting more tokens. And it's not like their tokens could be slashed or anything like that if they're bad actors. So I was wondering, will it really solve this? And I was trying to think of, is there another way to solve this that could be more elegant? And I do think that what I prefer is more of a medium-term solution. So the model that I prefer, unfortunately, isn't as easy to implement as this. But as an alternative to solving these problems, I really like the idea of only rewarding tokens for donations to causes. So basically, if you donate to a cause, then you can get tokens. That solves this, because then the donations to causes are spread out to all the projects in that cause. And we would use quadratic funding to do that. So quadratic funding is a great proven way to allocate a big pool of funding fairly across a group of different projects. So and I think it's sustainable because we would be generating interest off of all the donations to the causes. We could still potentially generate interest off donations to projects too, but there's some other complexities there. Whereas if we are with our current model, donations go directly to the project's address and they can withdraw at any time. And so, whereas the donations to the causes kind of have to sit there in escrow, so it really makes sense for those donations to generate interest. I like that because it enables any project to have matching funds, and it enables basically donations to any causes to get give tokens, and it seems sustainable and like it would solve this problem. It seems like it would solve both these problems. But I understand that that's not something that we have planned for MVP. So it's something I want to think about more, but I'm glad we're at least had time to give a little bit of an overview here. But I am thinking, after talking with Griff about it, I am thinking that the staking does seem like a good solution for when we launch, because we could get it up and running and we could enable people. We could incentivize donations to projects on day one, ideally. And then we can see how it works.
Could you just explain, like, briefly how that's easy to do for MVP? Like, how would that work? I may have tuned out there. Sorry, I had some technical difficulties.
No, I think it's pretty basic to have a smart contract on XDAI, where when people basically send give tokens to it, they also add a they just add the project's address or ID to when they send the give tokens, and then they can withdraw the give tokens when they want. And we basically have a list of on-chain, like a registry of how many give tokens are staked behind a project at any given time. And then when people donate to it, we look at that registry before we would send them the tokens. Or we could even, I just think it's one basic smart contract that could hold all of the tokens. Or we could also go like a Gnosis safe route and make a different a safe for each project that's holding the give tokens. But I honestly think it'd be easier just to have one contract that holds all the give tokens on XDAI, and then whenever people want to stake, it just knows how much is staked there, and when people donate, we can see how much is staked there to decide how much give tokens to give them.
Cool. That sounds awesome and easy to do for MVP, rather than deploying the Gnosis safes and all this kind of jazz.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So it does seem like a good MVP solution. So that's kind of where we're leaning towards now. And one thing Griff and I talked about last night that makes me a lot more comfortable with this, or confident in this, is if we could make it like the default action for a user right after they donate to a project, either just have those tokens somehow get default staked to a project, or make it just the primary CTA after they donate. The main thing is like, hey, stake your tokens to this project and get a return, get some high APY. That would make me feel better, because one of my big concerns was just, will people actually participate? If we had this extra layer where you now have to stake tokens to projects, will people actually do that in a way that makes sense, or will we end up with just a bunch, a few whale projects basically getting all of that token staked? All right, I got to run. I'm late for a Shapeshift meeting, but thanks everybody, and feel free to carry on. I will definitely get this proposal up